Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be taking a look at my Freezing Pulse Totem Hierophant build guide. And this is the actual guide, everyone, so there is a paste bin in the description of this video that you can check out, and I put a lot of work into that paste bin. There's different leveling trees that you can select, and there's also a lot of notes that go over when you want to switch into using different gear and different skills as you're leveling, as well as what skills to use during leveling. I've also made a very in-depth video on leveling with the totems that I used to get this build all the way to the first Labyrinth trial. So that was a little bit of a mouthful. Let's go ahead and start in with the skills that we're using on this build. Okay, here we are. We're going to take a look at the skills for the guide. So yeah, we're using Freezing Pulse Totems. We get 6 of them, which is really cool. But there's a lot more to the build that I wanted to discuss that I'm really excited about that make my build guide stand out from other Freezing Pulse Totems. So the build features 6 total totems. It features life regen due to the agnostic keystone on the passive tree. We also are using mind over matter. We have 4 permanent endurance and power charges. We also have 3 frenzy charges that are really easy to sustain. We also have like permanent onslaught pretty much. I'll discuss how that works later. And we have 5 unreserved auras that all have a 50% more aura effect on them. And that's the part of the build that I wanted to talk about a little bit more on in depth. So how we're getting that first off is with this March of the Legion unique. And what that does is it gives us a level 25 blessing that are supported to each of the auras that are in the boots. You can also put in a increased duration support gem if you would like to, but I want to tell you this is probably not the way to go. It is how I used it for a little while. But let me just go ahead and read you what Blessing does first, and then I will tell you why the skill effect duration support gem is probably not your best bet. So Blessing works like this. It reserves a portion of your mana for the aura for a short duration to give you an aura effect that lasts a longer duration. So at its base value, the mana reservation only lasts 0.2 seconds, which is really not long at all and pretty good. And then the aura lasts 11.4 seconds, which is, it's good. It's what you want. And you can increase the 11.4 seconds. Now, if you put something like an increased duration support gem onto the Legion boots, it also increases the mana reservation time as well. So this is actually bad, and it feels not great when you try to put it on there, which is why I say it's probably not what you want to use. You can try it out, like I did for a while. It just doesn't really feel good to have your mana reserved for any length of time on a mind over matter or agnostic build, or in this case, both. And so the 0.2 seconds that are at its base for the blessing support inside of these boots is totally fine, and I think it feels acceptable. But it does start to feel a little bit squishy when you start increasing that with that increased duration support. And I also want to show you that with the use of Supreme Ego, we actually are getting the 50% more effect of reserved skills. So right here, you can just read, let me move this up. You can have 1 permanent aura on you from your skills, which is fine. Auras from your skills do not affect allies. We don't care about that. Auras from your skills have 50% more effect on you and more mana reserved, which is actually okay too, but that does mean that we need to take these reduced reservation passives. Otherwise, this will not work. You will not be able to reserve your auras. So there were also some other features that I mentioned in that section. So I mentioned that we're also getting 4 endurance charges and 4 power charges. We're getting that from a little ascendancy node on our tree, which is called Conviction of Power. It just flat out gives us a +4 to the minimum endurance charges and power charges, and a +1 to the max number that we have. So if the max number is 3, it's going up to 4, and then the minimum is also going up to 4. Now, I want to mention that you can't actually expend any of these charges because you can't expend minimum endurance charges, so you can't really benefit from something like an Immortal Call. And I'm getting my Frenzy charges from Cold Snap, which is actually supported by Bone Chill, and it's in an Arcanist brand that's also using Frostbite. So that's actually a pretty nice setup. We use our Arcanist brand. It uses Bone Chill, which applies a bunch of other debuffs on the enemy, as well as being supported by the Bone Chill support. And then it's also using Frostbite, which is putting the resistances lower on all of our enemies. So it's a nice little setup, and it does reliably, or pretty reliably, give us those Frenzy charges. So that pretty well covers the charges that we're using in the build. But I also mentioned a few other features as well, and I want to talk about those. So I mentioned that we're getting 6 totems, and I'd like to discuss that briefly. Now, a lot of people are already going to know how I achieved 6 totems, but I'm going to talk about it just for anybody who doesn't already know. So how we're getting a total of 6 is we have 1 from the base support gem of spell totem support on our freezing pulse, but we also get an added totem for having Ancestral Bond, and we get an extra totem for having Pursuit of Faith, Ascendancy. We're getting another one from the Soul Mantle that we're using, and then our other 2 that we're getting are from the Multiple Totems support. So that's how we're getting all 6 of those totems, and I want to talk a little bit about Multiple Totems support, because it doesn't actually make us deal that much increased damage with our totems. In fact, it makes us deal less damage with the actual totems that we have, but we get 2 more of them. The main reason we're using it is actually because it gets the totems out faster, because it lets you summon 2 at a time, and I think it actually increases the placement speed as well. Actually, it doesn't. Our placement speed's actually already pretty high, though, so we only have to use this 3 times, and then boom, we're getting our totems out there. Now, the other features that I talked about were that we get a lot of life regen, and that is true. We're getting a ton of life regen because this is a mana-based build, and we're using Agnostic. So while we're not at full life, we sacrifice 20% of our mana per second. So the higher our mana pool is, the more life regen we're going to be getting from Agnostic. And we're also using Mind Over Matter to make that a little bit better. We're also using Divine Guidance. So we're getting like 40% of our damage is actually taken from mana before life. We also get Transfiguration of Mind. So we can increase our mana, and what that does for us is that actually increases our damage because of Transfiguration of Mind, and it increases our overall survivability. So it's kind of nice being able to just pump one stat. And mana's pretty easy to pump. In fact, this is pretty low for me. I'm going to be able to get this a lot higher. And you actually increase everything on your build. It's a very, very fun mechanic. And I love doing Mind Over Matter and Agnostic at the same time. Now, some people worry that like maybe you won't have enough mana, but I'll show you in a second. We're completely fine on mana, and we don't ever have to worry about that. Okay, the other features that I talked about were Onslaught. Yes, this build actually has Onslaught pretty much always. You can see it right here. This is really easy to obtain. You just need this cluster jewel right here with the, I think it's Sleeping Sentries. Yeah. So, sorry, Sleepless, not sleeping. Sleepless Sentries actually gives you a 20% increased totem duration, as well as Onslaught if you've summoned a totem recently. We're pretty much always summoning totems, so we always have Onslaught. And how Onslaught works is your totems benefit from your own stat modifiers, and so as long as you have Onslaught, pretty much that means that your totems are going to be having Onslaught. If you were to somehow put Onslaught on the totems themselves, they wouldn't actually be benefiting from it. Or at least the skill that's... anyway, it gets really confusing. But trust me, this works the way you want it to, and you are the one that wants to have that buff Onslaught. The other things that I mentioned were that... So, let's go ahead and see how all of these features work together to get us through a tier 11 map. Now this map, like I said, it's tier 11. It also is influenced by Baron. It actually contains his citadel at the end of it. And so I'm also going to be showing you a Conqueror's kill here as well with this. So we're going to move right on through. We're going to make sure we're popping our auras pretty much consistently. And you just throw them on, and our mana regen is high enough to where we're going to be getting our mana back pretty effectively. Now, after we kill the Baron, what we'll do is I will run back through and find the Ultimatum. I don't want to take too much of the video length, so I'm pretty much just going to be running straight to the end here, trying to kill as many enemies as we move along. But I'm not actually going to engage with the Ultimatum just yet. I'll just clip it in maybe near the end of the video or just right after the Baron kill. I'm going to try and put timestamps in the video so you can just click around and find the parts of the video that are important for you. And there we go. You can see us. We're just putting our auras back on again. So you can watch that mana kind of fluctuate quite a bit. And when we get hit, when we take like a big hit, you'll see our mana take a dip. But you'll notice that it comes back pretty fast. Alright, we're almost there. At least I think we are. Okay, we do want to pick up our maps. And here's an abyss. I'm just going to leave that. Because I'd like to get to Baron here. As soon as possible. But you can see the enemies aren't really giving us any trouble. We're just running right on through and just killing everything. And I'll even just show this abyss really quick. There's our damage coming out strong. Okay, what I'm going to do is I will just clip to the end where you can see the Baron kill, because the map is giving us a little bit of trouble as far as, like, we did not find him very quickly. Alright, here we are on the Baron fight. I need to go back and pick up the Maven's item that she just dropped. But, yeah, we'll just go ahead and throw on our auras here really quick. Get straight into the fight, drop our 6 totems, and he's going to go down pretty quick, I think you'll see. Anyway, enjoy the fight. Now, I wanted to talk about a little bit on leveling with this build. Now, I did actually make a full video talking completely about leveling with the Templar, and that will get you all the way to Act 3. We use Holy Flame Totems and Flame Wall to boost or maximize our damage and get through all the way up until you get your first Labyrinth. Now, after you get your Labyrinth, your first Labyrinth, you're going to want to start transitioning just to totems, because you're going to have 3 at that point. The first ascendancy that you're going to be taking is actually going to be the one that gives you the +1 to totems, which is this one here. Now, if you don't already have Ancestral Bond by this point, this is also when you're going to be picking up Ancestral Bond, which means 3 totems, and that's when you're pretty much going to be transitioning fully into just using the Freezing Pulse totems. Now, it's going to feel pretty bad if you don't already have something like First Snow, these jewels on the tree, which actually give you increased, it adds 2 additional projectiles to your Freezing Pulse totems, and it increases the damage. So we're actually going to want 2 of these on your passive tree, and that is about the time they're going to be doing that. Now, right around the same time, you're going to be hitting level... let's see, what is it for this Soul Mantle? I already forget. So around level 49 is when you're going to want to try and look for a Soul Mantle. Now, if you're in a trade league, this is going to be extremely easy. You just go onto POE.trade and pick up your Soul Mantle for around 2 Chaos if you want a 5-link. And then the gems that you're going to want to be using at that time are probably going to be something like Hypothermia support. Just use whatever you can, because I don't know if you're going to be able to get like the green sockets that you need. The Soul Mantle doesn't really roll green sockets naturally, so it could be a little bit tricky to actually get the same setup that I'm using. But in priority, if you check the paste bin, you'll see what I've listed there. I believe I've got Freezing Pulse Totems, Hypothermia support, Controlled Destruction support, which does give us reduced critical strike chance, but that's actually okay because some other things. We've got Cold Penetration. That's also pretty important. And then maybe added cold damage support. And then at the very end, this multiple totem support is actually the one thing that you can get away without using at all. I know that does reduce the amount of totems that you have by 2, but I promise you, your damage is going to be just fine with these 4 totems. All the way, even pretty dang far into maps, you're going to be just fine without them. Now, early on, the kind of weapons that you're going to be using to level are just going to be some blue wands, probably. And all you really have to do is a vendor recipe to add on, adds cold damage to spells. And again, in my leveling guide that I have, I talked very extensively on how you actually get that recipe down. But these are our weapons right now. We're using something with high spell damage, adds cold damage to spells, cast speed, critical strike chance for spells. We're not using a multiplier here because we are an elemental overload build. And then increase cold damage and mana. Mana is very important too. And our other one, we're using, again, just spell damage, cold damage to spells, cast speed, critical strike chance for spells. Projectile speed actually does help us here because Freezing Pulse is a projectile. And then again, mana. Mana is super important. Okay, now, other aspects about leveling the build. So, early on, like I said, you're going to be using Holy Flame Totem. And at some point, you're going to be getting this Soul Mantle. Now, Soul Mantle inflicts a random hex on you when your totems die. So what this looks like right now for me is that as we're using our totems, a bunch of these curses just keep stacking up. Now we're actually not taking any effect of these curses thanks to an item, Viridi's Veil. How Viridi's Veil works is that when we use a magic ring in our right slot, in our ring slot, we won't get any, we'll become hexproof. We also will have the damage of enemies that's hitting us as unlucky, which means that on their actual damage roll, they will roll twice and take the lower of the 2 damage rolls. So it's like how this wand says, you know, adds 42 to 65 cold damage of spells. It means that more often we're going to be getting that lower end of that 42 to 65 range if an enemy hits for, like, say, 42 to 65 on us. So this is actually really, really good. It's a nice defensive layer. It's not amazing by any means, but it is nice. It does mean that we are, on average, taking a little bit less damage. And then I wanted to talk about... before you actually get the Viridi's Veil, though, you're going to be using these Kikazaru rings. And you have to put one in each slot. And then you'll also need to take this little passive node right here, Sanctum of Thought. So you see it gives you a 20% effect of reduced effect of curses on you. And then each of the rings gives you 40%. It does stack up. And once you have all of it, you will be completely immune to curses. So at level 49, you can actually just start using this Soul Mantle right away because the level requirement of the rings is only about 20. So if you get a 5-link, just go ahead and put that on, and leveling is a breeze all the way to maps. Then when you hit level 68, start looking for a Viridi's Veil, which costs around 5 chaos, stick that in there, and get yourself a nice magic ring. The ring I chose to use is an amethyst ring to get the chaos resistance. It's got a little bit of fire resistance as the synthesized implicit, I guess you could call it, or permanent, what is that, suffix. And then we did get a decent life roll. This is probably not the best thing that I could be using, because I probably could use something like a, oh, what is that thing called? Probably could be using something like a Vermilion Ring, and then just rolling like fire resistance and life onto something like that. That would give us a lot more life, but I do like the chaos resistance. So overall, leveling, pretty easy to do. There's really not much to it. It's actually, you know, as long as you get these rings and you can nullify the curses on the soul mantle in some way, then you're fine. Alright, let's go ahead and just kind of summarize what we saw with this build and what kind of content you can expect to be able to handle with it. I actually think that you can handle pretty much everything that the game can throw at you, except for maybe Delve. With Delve, you know, the totems just don't handle the darkness all that well. But anything where you can drop your totems down and pop your auras right before clicking on the actual mechanic, that works really good with this. Like the strong boxes, for instance, you know, you can set all your totems down and click the strong box, and your totems just start killing everything, even if you get frozen. That's why Ritual is actually really good, Ultimatum is good, and even Heist, for instance. You know, you can set all your totems down and then click that door, the door starts opening, and you've already got your damage there ready to go. So if you have any questions about this build at all, please check me out on Twitch, which is just Status FX Gaming. I will be on there streaming Path of Exile a lot. And now we are switching up the game from time to time, but I'll still be happy to answer any Path of Exile questions that you have about this build or anything else. Also, thank you so much for checking out the channel. If you like this kind of content, consider subscribing to the channel so you can be notified when we make more videos. I have another build guide coming up, which is a Bladefall, Blade Blast, Inquisitor. And with that, everybody, you take it easy, and we'll see you on the next video.